How's it going, everybody? My name is Unpause, aka Ben, aka Pug, aka whatever you want to call me, and today back with another album of the decade discussion, second one, and today, as you can see, up here and up here, we are doing Run the Jewels, the 2013 collaboration album from rapper Killer Mike and rapper/producer LP. Came out in 2013, only 10 songs, quite short, coming in only 33 minutes. But definitely one to talk about in my eyes. As you can see up here, it's really trippy because it's mirrored. I've added the track list now, which I'm going to do for most of them, so you can sort of see which songs I'm talking about and what order they come in. I didn't know that this album originally came as 2 discs, so it came with the first 5 tracks and then into the second 5 tracks. I didn't know that on Spotify. It doesn't show that, but obviously streaming services weren't quite as popular like 6 years ago. But yeah, straight into discussing about it. Personally, I am a really big fan of this album. It opens up very strongly with Run the Jewels. It's very ahead of its time for me. This song especially, and like the whole album, the production feels very modern and sort of almost like electro inspired, whilst also feeling very like retro rap in terms of flow and lyricism at the same time, and it's a nice mix and it goes together very well. And the first song is sort of a very good way to sort of set up the whole album, because a lot of the songs sound sort of tonally quite similar to the first song, and it sort of shows you that, like, in terms of the lyricism and the tone of the first song, it shows you it's not going to be like a very friendly album. It's going to be quite polarizing, and I can see how it is quite polarizing, but it's not really something that bothers me personally. But the first song is quite sort of intense in terms of, especially for the time. It was a time when sort of rap was starting to calm down a bit, and it's definitely sort of built it back up. And yeah, I think the first song is a brilliant way to open it. It sets up a little story that kind of continues through the album, obviously the story being about like kind of robbery and things like that, and the lyrics kind of follow that. And the first song sets up very nicely. And yeah, I sort of have no complaints about the first song. I think it's a very solid song. I think it sets up the album well, and yeah, no complaints from that one. Second song is one of my favourite songs on the album, probably my second favourite. I think it's very strong as well. The feature from Big Boy is very good, and the production is also very good, and just like the opening of it for me, with Killer Mike's verse on the very beginning, is just very impressive to me, and it's something I'm a huge fan of. I think the flow from LP and Killer Mike throughout the album are like spotless, and that's one of my favourite things about the album. The technical ability of both of them is very strong, and I've always been quite a big fan of like rapper producer sort of duos. Obviously Mad Villainy and Made by Mad Villain is the most popular one, from Madlib and MF Doom. That's like the one that everyone goes to. But then Madlib and Freddie Gibbs last year with Bandana, was that this year? This year with Bandana was very good. And there's been lots of examples of like a producer and a rapper making a very good project. But it also helps that LP is a very good rapper on his own, and all of his verses are also, some of them are as good as Killer Mike's, if not better on some songs. And I think the third track, 36-inch Chain, for me is an example of LP's verse being better than Killer Mike's. I'm a huge fan of 36-inch Chain as well. The like electro type production is like, it's so different to hear on like a rap song, like almost techno, but somehow it fits really well. And whether it's the hook that sort of complements it nicely, or just the actual verses, but either way, the lyrics and the flows complement the beat very well, and it just comes across as a very strong song to me, with, again, no issues. 3 songs in, and I've got no issues with any of them. I think they're all brilliant so far. And that continues with DDFH, which it's kind of more of the same. It's very unique production. You sort of hear more of this production today, but even now, it feels almost ahead of its time. But especially in 2013, the production is so different to everything that came out at that time, and then especially everything that's coming out now, coming out today. It just feels so unique that I like. That's one of the things that grabs my attention from this album. It doesn't feel like it's just another rap album. It doesn't feel like it's just something that you sort of listen to and think, yeah, that's good, I'll put it on in the background, it's fun to listen to. It's something that grabs my attention because the beats and the way the songs open are all so unique, and that's like one of the main things to me that just stands out so much, especially for the time. And I feel like that has to be sort of said. Like, each song feels different enough to all feel unique, but they all follow sort of a similar style that makes the album flow very nicely, and that's something that I'm always a big fan of, and especially a big fan of on this album. Into Sea Legs, probably my favourite song on the album. The opening to it is just brilliant for me. The hook is like kind of the only bit I'm not a huge fan of, but it's still solid enough. It doesn't like deter the song from being good at all. And just the intro to it and the flows throughout are just brilliant, and it's such a good song to me. It's like a song that I've been listening to since the release and sort of still listen to now. Like, I started listening to the album more recently, obviously, to like prepare for the review and prepare to discuss it, so that will change some things. But even before I started re-listening to it, I would still listen to Sea Legs. It was still in a lot of my playlists because I think it's just, even now, it still feels like a very unique song. There are a lot of songs there aren't many songs, that sound like Sea Legs, and like a lot of the songs on this album, and it's something that very much stands out to me. The second half of the album, the second disc, I suppose, as you can see up here, this is where it kind of starts to fall off a little bit for me. Not to a huge degree, but it's not as good. Whilst the transition between Sea Legs and Job Well Done is like, it's just amazing. The transition is so seamless, and there's so many times, like the first few times I listened to the song, I was like, when did Sea Legs end and when did Job Well Done begin? Because it flows on like the same beat, and it's just such a good transition. But Job Well Done, I don't sort of enjoy it as much as I did any of the songs on the first half, really. I don't necessarily dislike it, but it just kind of feels not as unique, and it's not like, the flows don't feel as good to me, and it feels a little bit, I feel like, obviously this is all personal taste, and everything in music is, but it sort of feels like it's not quite as technical as some of the other songs, and that's kind of what takes away from it for me. No Calm Down is, again, it's not one that grabs me as much, and honestly a lot of the songs on the second half of the album I don't love as much as the first half of the album. That's not to say I dislike them. Songs like No Calm Down, I'd still, if I was to give it like a rating out of 10, probably like an 8 or something. It's still a song I enjoy listening to, and especially for the time it came out, it was way ahead of its time. But I just don't find it as impressive as any of the songs on the first half. And No Calm Down is kind of similar. I prefer it to Job Well Done, and I think it's still a good song. But after such a strong opening, to then kind of fall down a layer, it can be a bit underwhelming. And that's one of the things I kind of struggle with a bit on this one. It doesn't feel like the production, it didn't grab me as much. Like I said, the first half, all of the songs, the production just grabbed me on all of them, and that's something that stood out hugely to me. But on the second half, thus far, with the first two songs, it didn't so much. Get It is probably one of my least favourite songs on the album. I don't dislike it. I'd still rate it around like a 6 or a 7, but the like hook bit I'm not a huge fan of, and none of the flows either sort of stand out to me. It's one I don't have a whole lot to say about, because there wasn't necessarily anything bad about it, so I can't say, oh, I didn't enjoy this bit, because there weren't bits that I didn't really not enjoy. But there were just bits that I didn't think stood out. There were bits that were like, it's just not amazing, it's not a song that grabs me. Sorry about that, my screen just decided to turn itself off. So that leads me into Twin Hype Back, which is probably my least favourite song on the album. It sort of feels the least like a song as well. There's sort of the skit at the beginning, and there's the least like amount of actual music on it for me. I don't know what it is about the song. I just never really got into it. The production was kind of lackluster, and none of the flows were amazing, and the skits kind of like take me out of the song a bit. My emotions a little bit like didn't ask for this, but obviously again like it's, I guess you could say it adds to like the story of the album, but for me it just kind of took away from it, and it's probably the only song that I disliked on the album. But that's still a positive, I suppose. The fact that there was only one song I disliked is always a positive. It doesn't mean it made the album a lot worse for me, but there are certainly other songs I would have enjoyed in place of it, and I probably would have enjoyed the album more if it wasn't on it, honestly. On to the last song, Christmas Miracle. This is another song that I love. I feel like it's a great way to close out the album. Production's great, flow's great, it ties up the little story perfectly, and it just finished the album in a very strong way. It was probably my favourite song in the second half of the album, and the only one that I really loved after the sort of 4 not amazing songs. But I feel like those 4 songs I view harsher because of the way the album began. It began in such a strong way, and it continued doing that. If the album had the like 5 songs, like the first half, for the second 5 songs, I'd probably give like a 10 out of 10, because those first 5 songs to me are near perfect. There were no issues with it. The production was incredible. The flow was as well. It's just the second half that kind of lets it down a little bit. Whilst I would still rate this album very highly, like around the 8-9 type rating, it does sort of suffer from sort of peaking too early. I think it peaks in the middle, which is always nice with Sea Legs, but then it does sort of feel like you're on a slow decline up until the final song, which sort of brings it back up, and it does end it nicely. It's always good if a song that closes the album is one of the better ones, because it leaves you with a good feeling. If the last song is disappointing, you're kind of left like, oh, that wasn't, you don't feel like you got any closure towards the song and towards the album. But I feel like this doesn't do that, because the final song is very good, and that's always a positive. In terms of like the album overall, I feel like it's brilliant. I feel like the project of Run the Jewels is fantastic. Run the Jewels 2 and 3 were, both brilliant. Meow the Jewels was interesting, but it was fun to listen to, so there's no doubt about that. So I can't even complain about that really. But it does feel like it's kind of let down a little bit, but I feel like I can look past it, because the quality of the first 5 songs and the quality of the final song, and then even the 3 songs I said I didn't like that much, Get It, No Come Down and Job Well Done, they were still very good songs. The production for this is incredible. The mix of like techno and electro music and normal rap beats fits so well. It doesn't feel like it should work as well as it does, but somehow it does. It might be that Killer Mike's flow complements it well. One of my friends I was talking to recently said it sounds like Rick Ross if he used good beats and had a better flow, which I thought summed it up quite nicely. Obviously, I like Rick Ross, but this just feels like a different level. I feel like there's kind of like rap you can listen to just in general, and then there's sort of projects like this, projects that stand out and have more of an impact on the music at the time, and I feel like it kind of has impacted a lot of songs. It sort of introduced a lot more of this kind of different production that you hear a lot more today, and I feel like this was slightly inspired by this album. I feel like for me personally, it's definitely one of my albums of the decade. It will definitely get in the top 15. I'm not sure what position. I think I'm going to do these discussion videos and then do a final list at the end. I think potentially Taboo might end up making my list. Having more of a think about it and listening to it a few more times, it does have a lot of classics on it. But I'll cover that in the final album discussion. This will definitely get in my list. I feel like it'll be nearer the bottom, but I'm not sure, just because there were a lot of albums in this decade where there were no songs I disliked, and like I said, there was one song I disliked on this album, and a few songs I wasn't a huge fan of, and that kind of does lower the quality for me. But again, the way this album feels so unique, even today, there are very few albums that sonically are similar to this one, and that's something big for me. It feels so unique, and even at this point, sounding so different to everything else that's available is something that's impressive when it's 6 years old. The fact that it still stands out, that's a very impressive feat, and it's something that I sort of take into consideration quite a bit when sort of discussing this album, and it's something that definitely stands out to me. So overall, this will be one of my albums of the decade. Not sure what position. If I had to take a guess, probably about 9th at the moment, but I'll have a think, do the rest of the discussions. Hopefully Wake My Love will be next, but I'll have to see when I can get the next ones done. But yeah, if you haven't listened to this album, I'd recommend it. Even if you just listen to a few, I'd recommend Sea Legs, Banana Clipper, and Run the Jewels. I think just check it out if you are interested in this type of music, if you're interested in rap music. And yeah, I'd definitely recommend at least those songs, just because it's so unique. There's a lot of music that sounds completely different to this, and very little amount of music that sounds the same, and that's something that stands out to me. So if you haven't checked it out, I'd recommend it. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next stream or video.